Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're going to jump into some malicious compliance. Our first story today comes to us from Variable 851. You can absolutely wait to speak to the owner. Let's jump right in. Just found this sub and wanted to share my story from more than 20 years ago. I was attending grad school at the time to finish my doctoral degree, which I'm only mentioning as relevant because the customer made a crack about intelligence while working at my father's business, an auto salvage yard. Our yard was located in New Jersey, and this event occurred in August, so it was hot and very humid. I was generally very dirty when I was at work, with grease and grime all over my arms and clothes. If you washed your hands and arms every time they looked dirty, your skin would just get dry and irritated. So, with the exception of stopping to eat, I was absolutely filthy all day long. Our yard mostly dealt with shops and small independent mechanics who came in looking just as dirty as I was, so it was completely normal. Another point relevant to this story is I look absolutely nothing like my father. He is 5'8" and weighs at most 140 pounds, and I am 6'2", and back then I was powerlifting and weighed right around 220 pounds. So here's my story. A guy comes in to pick up something he bought when I was not there that had to be taken out of a car. I don't even remember what it was now, but it was something fairly heavy. For him, not for me, and dirty. If we had parts in our warehouse, they'd get scrubbed and cleaned by me before being labeled and cataloged, but parts coming right off a car just had the loose grime knocked off. So the guy comes in looking very out of place for our yard, wearing a button-down shirt, khakis, and dress shoes. He hands me his receipt and I tell him I'll bring it out the side door. I walk out with his item on a hand truck, and the only vehicle I see parked is an Acura sedan, very unlike the beat-up shop vehicles most of our customers drove. The guy is walking around the front of his car talking on his phone, but the trunk is open, so I bring the hand truck around and leave his item on the ground with a piece of cardboard to keep his trunk clean and go back inside. A few minutes later, he comes inside wanting to know what he is supposed to do with the part, to which I facetiously reply, install it, I imagine. He wants to know why the part is dirty. I reply, it's used. He wants to know how he is supposed to get it home. I reply, in your car. He wants to know why I didn't put the item in his trunk, and I point to the sign behind him, which admittedly is partially obscured by the open door, which says that we are not responsible for loading parts due to liability for possible damage to the customer's vehicle. He turns around looking pissed and shouts, "What am I supposed to do now, genius? Because I must be dumb if I'm dirty, right?" There are now two other customers by the office and I know them both well, so I tell them I'll be right with them and walk around outside to the guy's car because I just want him gone. I throw a blanket over the rear bumper of his car, remind him that I am not liable for damage, and I lift the piece up and gently put it on the cardboard in his car. To do this without damaging anything, I had to put one of my hands on the side of the trunk, and I left a huge greasy handprint, largely on purpose. While I'm loading, he is standing so close to me supervising that my arm bumps his arm and his sleeve gets dirty. The entire time this exchange has been going on, he has been on his phone, and he is now ranting into his phone about our interaction, and he calls me genius again, and I reply, "You came to a salvage yard to pick up a heavy, dirty used part in dress clothes with a luxury car. Who's the genius?" At that point, he also noticed the grease on his car and his dirty sleeve, and he wants to know if the owner is here. And I tell him Bob is working out in the yard. He demands to speak to him, and I say fine. We walk back around to the office, and I point to Bob, who is way out in the yard on the forklift moving cars that are going to the crusher. This is time sensitive because the truck will come to pick them up and block the entire street while we load, so we have to be ready. He starts to walk into the yard, and I try to stop him and tell him it's too dangerous. He keeps walking, so I point out that our Doberman is trotting along behind the forklift. She was actually our dog from home and very friendly, but we brought her with us every day because we couldn't get home to let her out. He sees the dog and stops, and I tell the guy he has to wait until Bob is finished moving vehicles, and it will be a while, which he says is fine because he is going to tell Bob exactly how his customers are being treated. Over the next 40 minutes, I walk past the guy multiple times helping customers, and each time I pass him, he mutters something about me being fired and me being sorry. Finally, the forklift shuts down and Bob stands up and my new friend seems ecstatic. banging on the counter and telling me that Bob is done and he wants to speak to him immediately. I walk outside with my new friend right next to me, climb up on a car's fender and wave my arms to get Bob's attention and scream, "Hey Dad, this guy wants to talk to you." And with that, my new buddy says, "F you," turns and walks out, hops in his car and guns it up the street. I think we can all take something out of this. I think when we're at work and we're dealing with a really bad customer, we should call the manager over, but we should just call them Dad or Mom, even if they're not. Seems like it might de-escalate a few more problems. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our second story today comes to us from Hello, I is Clay. Not putting in enough hours, you say? Let's jump right in. I was reading some posts about employers judging employees based on idle time and such during COVID times, and it reminded me of this one at my last job. A few years ago, I worked as a field engineer for a call recording company. I worked primarily with 911 agencies and would integrate recording systems with radio and phone systems to record the calls and radio traffic. If you've heard a 911 call on the news from one of a few states along the East Coast, there's a very good chance I built and installed that system. As part of our company's policy, we would do preventative maintenance every 6 months. This was where we went on site, tested everything was functioning properly, and showed some value in our maintenance contracts through FaceTime with the customers. After some years, I had climbed the ladder to being the lead engineer, installer, and trainer. I trained most of the other engineers and techs within the company, along with performing my normal duties. I had also installed the vast majority of the systems I was doing maintenance on, and was extremely familiar with them. A maintenance visit took me around an hour, where it took the new guys 4 to 5 hours, and I would usually knock out 2 to 3 maintenance visits in a single day. I had literally triple the numbers as the next closest tech. As often happens, eventually the company was bought out. The new owner came in and presented himself as very metrics focused. The problem was that he didn't understand what we did in the field, so his metrics weren't always good ones. Eventually, I got written up and put on a performance improvement plan. The reason, days I didn't have to drive far, I would finish 3 maintenance visits and still be home in less than 6 hours. Again, my actual performance metrics were legitimately triple the next closest tech, and most days I worked well over 8 hours when driving was included. But instead of looking at those metrics, he used time as his only metric and focused solely on the shortest days. And unfortunately for me, I objectively worked less time than anyone else. Now for the malicious compliance. Instead of scheduling the way I had previously, I started scheduling to ensure I hit 8 hours a day every day. Previously, I had started at a customer site at 9 a.m., whether it was 1 hour away or 5, so would get up at whatever time that day required. I would also try to knock out multiple customers in the same area on the same trip to save driving time on longer days. Some days I would drive 12 hours total, knock out 3 maintenance visits, taking another few hours, and have a total day of 15 plus hours. Afterwards, I left for sites at exactly 8 a.m. and tried to get home at exactly 5 p.m. For those sites that were 5 hours away, can't do them without a hotel room. Instead of costing a full tank of gas and a single day's wages for 3 clients, it now costs the company the same amount of gas, 3 to 4 nights at a hotel, and multiple days of my salary. For closer sites that I didn't need a hotel, I would make sure I didn't leave too soon to get home at exactly 5 p.m., so would sit in a server room playing games on my phone for a few hours. If sites were close enough, I would still try to knock out 2 or sometimes 3, but if time was the metric, I was going to make sure I worked as closely to 8 to 5 as possible without doing anything detrimental to a customer. Overall, I was trying to make a point to show that while I may have been meeting the time metric, I was actually doing less work by meeting that metric. We did employee reviews every quarter, so when my next review came around 3 months later, I tried to bring it up. Instead, the new owner praised me for working harder and ignored that I was doing significantly less work. During that meeting, I tried showing that it was costing the company more, and I was achieving less by meeting that metric instead of an actual performance metric. But somehow, despite my spreadsheet showing costs, site visits, completed maintenance, and everything else, he refused to understand it. He kept praising how my work ethic had improved and didn't want me to change anything or go back. So I didn't change a thing and coasted at that job for the next few years. OP mentioned in the comments that they managed to have some great vacations with him and his girlfriend staying in hotels instead of driving all the time, so they can't really complain about how it went down. Our third story today comes to us from WolfPetter42. Fine, I'll move back out. Let's jump right in. 2 years ago, I decided to look for a new place to live. Just wanted somewhere else, management was crap, nothing ever got fixed, neighbors were pricks. Had I known what would have happened, however, I'd have dealt with that with a grand smile on my face. Cue time to move. I'm looking for places. My aunt says, "We have a spare room, you can move in with us." So I ask her how much rent she wants to charge me, seeing as if it's too much, I'll just look for my own apartment elsewhere. They wanted $150 a month, and to be honest, that was the deal of a lifetime. There's a saying, if something seems too good to be true, it is, and boy, I should have remembered that. A few days later, I was moved in. Just a bed, table, TV, Wii, and 2 tablets as well as all my clothes, seeing as I didn't own much at the time. I paid them that month's rent and the next, so I wouldn't need to do it next month. There was no written agreement, there was no lease or whatever. My room is set up, took hours to clean cause they're kids, they have 7, 3 are moved out by this point. Used to use it as a playroom, toys, and general crap. After being there for 2 days, my uncle told me, "Since you're living here now too, you need to help out around the house." I asked him what he'd like me to do, and the list was staggering. They wanted me to do the dishes, sweep the floors, watch the kids when they were gone, cook for the kids, clean up after the kids, do the laundry, every single night. They expected me to be a live-in male nanny. This was outrageous, but I decided to just suck it up and hopefully get them to agree to far less later on. Seeing as $150 a month was golden. It lasted all of 5 days. Their kids destroyed my entire room. Despite having a lock, they just broke it. Their youngest 2 daughters jumped on my small boxy TV like a trampoline because they're bored, and neither of their parents did anything about it. Refused to punish them, refused to replace my items that got destroyed, which also included my Wii, which they smashed because I told them they couldn't play it, and my 2 tablets. I talked to my aunt about moving out and how I'd like to get my stuff replaced. She laughed and told me no, so I went to my uncle to ask about it. He told me they wouldn't pay a red cent, and that if I didn't like living here near their kids, then maybe I should move out. So 2 days later, I did. I had almost nothing left except my clothes and some photos that held sentimental value to me. The rest of my crap was in a storage unit. Since I only got 1 room, why bring my furniture? I left in the middle of the night, and to replace the stuff their kids destroyed and that they refused to replace, I went into their shed and took my uncle's hunting gear. A crossbow, arrows, pretty much all his gear, he didn't own any pew-pews, and sold it on eBay, which just about covered the cost of replacing all my stuff, including the bed I left behind because one of their kids decided it would be funny to piss in it. They didn't call me until 2 days later when they realized the house was a total mess. Floors dirty, dishes piled high in the sink, trash not taken out, etc. My aunt was absolutely furious. She screamed at me on the phone that I needed to come back, we had a deal. I'm not gonna lie, I lost my patience with these people, so I screamed back. You people told me if I didn't like living there to move out, so I did. Sucks to be you, B. Maybe clean your own damn house and watch your own kids. Before ending the call and turning my phone off to ignore the amount of spam calls and texts I was getting. My uncle only ever goes hunting every 10 years or so, no idea why, so they still haven't found out I sold his hunting gear, plus their shed is an absolute trash pile. So I was surprised I found anything in there worth of value to sell to replace my crap. I apologize for any misspellings or anything of the sort. I'm not used to writing these stories out, but it seems sort of therapeutic to write out the crazy crap that nasty side of my family has done. Okay, so $150 a month is absolutely tempting, but you're right, when it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. I do have to add on that I completely disagree with you stealing things out of their shed though. That is not your stuff, and there's no reason for you to take it, even if you're selling it to replace stuff that broke. Our last story today comes to us from Unique Harmony 7. Can't take an hour off to go see the doctor? Say goodbye to your vacation. Let's jump right in. So this happened in a job I worked at 7 years ago. My manager was planning to go on vacation for 2 weeks and she needed to pick someone in the department to take over for her during that time and stay on top of her stuff. I was her second hand in the department, the highest producer, and already responsible for many of her tasks, so I was the natural fit. However, there was a lot on the administrative side that I needed to learn, so the week before she was to go off was my training week. Now, on the Monday, I had a bit of a stomach ache. I thought it was just indigestion or maybe gas and didn't think much of it. Tuesday, it got a little worse, and after work, I tried to stop by a walk-in clinic to get checked out because my instincts told me it might be something. Unfortunately, clinics usually hit capacity well before 6 p.m. when I got off work, and I wasn't able to see the doctor. It didn't seem serious enough to warrant a visit to the ER, so I just figured I would try again the next day at lunch. I asked my manager first thing if I could take an extra 30 to 45 minutes for my lunch and use it to run to the clinic. We got 1 hour lunch, clinic was 15 minutes away, and usually an hour or so wait, so I figured that was all I needed. She said no because there was too much to do. She said I was probably constipated and to just get a laxative after work. I realized that I hadn't gone in a few days, so maybe she was right. Thursday comes and the pain has increased to the point where I couldn't really sit comfortably. I told her I was in a lot of pain and asked again if I could take some extra time at lunch to go to the doctor. Again, she said no. We only have 2 days left to train and she has to be sure I was ready. She says to just stick it out and go to the doctor on Saturday as it's probably nothing. She says this is where I need to prove myself to the company and that if I want to move up, they need to see me as reliable. I should point out too that when this happened, I was fresh out of college and young, and this was my first full-time job where I could really see a career. So I complied and decided to stick it out and go to the clinic Saturday. I didn't make it that far. Friday evening I went to bed as soon as I got home from work, and at midnight woke up in excruciating pain. My boyfriend at the time woke up to me screaming and took me to the hospital. Pain was a 10 out of 10, and they immediately ordered scans. I had a hemorrhagic ovarian cyst, basically a cyst on my ovary that formed on top of a big vein or artery, causing it to split open, and my abdominal cavity had been slowly filling with blood that was also clotting and sticking to my organs. My family was called down and waited with me while we waited for an emergency surgical room to open up. I literally almost died. They operated for 8 hours, removing the clots and all the blood. They said I had 2 cups of blood clots and I would have likely died if I hadn't come in when I did. The best part was though, I had to spend a week in the hospital and another 6 weeks off at home to recover, meaning my manager had to cancel her vacation as there was no one to cover her now. She lost a ton of money on deposits and things as this was a big overseas trip for her family that they canceled last minute. I absolutely relished letting her know as well that the doctors told me that had I come in a few days earlier when I initially wanted to, that it likely would have just been a quick day surgery, laparoscopic surgery which is very quick and easy, no hospital stay required, and orders to just take it easy for a few days, which I could have done at work. It was an office job, so I would have been okay to sit there all day versus at home. I could have still done most of the training and covered her, but because I complied with her instructions to wait until the weekend, I got 7 weeks of paid time off and she lost her vacation and a couple grand in lost travel expenses. We have to remember that we only get one body in this life, and if you think that something's wrong with it, you need to go in and get it checked out. Yeah, it might have put your job on the line, but remember, you said you almost died. Let's think about that for a second. Would I rather be dead or have my job? Let's see. Check out all 4 OPs at the links in the description down below. Thanks for watching, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.